Mind calm, body at ease, mind quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Amoga. Varochana Mahamudra. Mani Padme Jvala Pravartaya.
Please stand and join me in the three refuges. will take refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, first in Sino-Korean, which comes from our lineage of teachers, and then in English. So in preparation, take a moment to feel yourself very connected to the earth beneath you, bringing your attention all the way down to your feet. And then bring right and left sides of the body together, palm to palm. In this gesture we call Hakchang, sincere heart. Breathe. And throw your voice in as best you can. And now in English, please repeat after me. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to Sangha,
and resolve with all beings
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
I will seek peace and happiness for the many,
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddhalands unimpeded.
And now please return to your places so that we can enjoy another brief period of meditation. So please sit in a very stable position and then work with your body to straighten the back. Bringing the hands into a mudra, left fingers on top of right, with the thumbs intimately touching. Turn on your meditation light by looking down the bridge of your nose, softly focusing your eyes. Place the tip of your tongue at the back of your top teeth to relax the jaw and the throat. Pay attention now to your breathing, ideally breathing from the Chanchan area that's about 2 finger widths below the belly button. And then just enjoy your practice until you hear the sound of the bell. Please join in a little bit of stretching as a transition from our meditation practice. Starting at the front of the skull, moving toward the back, just massaging the ribs. Breathing as we do these stretches, working with the ears, pressure points in the ears. And then leaning forward to stretch the lower back, bringing the eyes up. Stretching upwards to the sky. Bending the arms as far as you can. And then folding forward, again to stretch the lower back. Reaching upwards. And then to the left. Looking over to the right. Clasping the hands behind your back, lean forward. Bring the arms up as far as you can. And then sit up and we move into a spinal twist. First to the left, bringing the eyes all the way around as far as you can. Switching to the right. And then placing the fifth at the base of the trunk. Some nice big circles on the upper back. Reverse directions. Placing the right hand over the left rib. Lean over to the right. And then to the left. Clasping the hands behind the head. Some sharp outward breaths. Twisting to the left. To the right. Far upward. Okay, how's the volume today?
Can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good
Nice to see you all. I'm curious how many of you were here last week or maybe last week had a chance to look at our recording of the service? Okay, fair number of you. So of those of you who were here, you may remember that it was a family service, so all of our kids were here. And Hayun was telling this great story about the three jewels. So it involved a monkey king with 80,000 followers and a monster in the lake. Everybody wanted to go for a swim, but the monster wouldn't let them until the monkey king brought the three jewels to the monster. And the three jewels are Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? And so as the monkey found these three jewels, it was a process really of self-discovery. And then Haji Sunam, she made the remark that maybe there's a fourth jewel, and that fourth jewel is faith. So we've been having some interesting discussions about this topic of faith this week at our breakfast table. So I'm curious what people's reactions are to this word faith, and I'll share a bit of my own experience. I was a skeptic for a lot of my life, I would say. For about 50 years of my life, I was a skeptic about this thing called faith, because it brought to mind sort of this image of blind acceptance that is prevalent in our culture. And Sharon Salzberg, who works with a lot of practitioners, has this little vignette about what somebody said to her. So they said, I came to Buddhism to get away from all of this faith. And because of my own conditioning and background, the very word faith is difficult to hear. It brings up questions of being good enough, having enough faith, being brought up facing dire consequences if you don't have enough faith or didn't have the right kind of faith. So the word faith brought up a lot of fear rather than faith seeming like an antidote to fear. So my own sort of experience with this faith coming up is I was very, went through kind of a traditional path of graduating from high school and then college, going to graduate school, finding a job, working for many years when work was sort of the main focus of my attention. And then eventually encountered some suffering associated with that. That in particular, one of my coworkers was having difficulty and threatened to commit suicide, these kinds of things. So I decided I needed a break. So I got on a plane and I went to this place called Sedona, Arizona. I discovered Sedona because there was a picture on one of my coworkers' walls. That's a nice place to go for vacation. Sedona is into all sorts of alternative spirituality. And so while I was there, I picked up this book, Stumbling Toward Enlightenment, and it was written by somebody who used to live here at this temple. And so that was kind of my first encounter with teachings. So two things happened, and these usually are the precursors to the arising of faith. So the one was encountering suffering. The second was encountering teaching. And so when those two things happened, I came back and I said, I have to check out this Arbor Zen Buddhist temple and see what it's all about. and have been coming here ever since. So that it was sort of my experience with encountering faith. And as we look at this word faith, our founder, Samu Sunam, offered us some reflections on what is meant by faith in Buddhism. Faith in Buddhism is very different from other religions. It's not a belief in God or in doctrines. Instead, it's a belief in ourselves. In Buddhism, we believe that we are all endowed with Buddha nature, and therefore, despite our habits and defilements, our original mind is pure, untainted, and completely free from duality. In other words, enlightenment and liberation are inherent in all of us. So we're looking within. For this reason alone, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas among us constantly urge us to discover our true nature right now. It is the Buddhist belief that we can always help ourselves spiritually. So now we have this notion of self-help. So first just look within and now self-help. No matter what our life is like. The only reason we don't help ourselves spiritually is not our past karmic hindrances or difficulties, but our lack of trust in ourselves. We do not believe that we are originally Buddhas. It is as though we question the existence of the sun on a cloudy day because we cannot see the sunlight. Once the clouds scatter, we realize that sunshine and blue mountains have always been there. Likewise, once we gain wisdom, we know that we have been Buddhas all along. So faith in Buddhism is this self-confidence, this self-help, sort of this self-reflection. So what are, next I was sort of asking myself, well, what's the function of faith? So that's maybe a definition of what faith is. So what's its function? As I did some reading on this, I encountered a couple of interesting thoughts. The first is that it's the function of faith that often moves us to action. So Martin Luther King said, faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. So you may be staring at a staircase in the dark, but in order to go up the staircase, you have to have some sort of element of faith or willingness to suspend disbelief that the staircase is there. And then a second function of faith is that it's a tool that we can use along the way. So there's many lists. In Buddhism, we have all sorts of lists. But some of these lists include the word faith. And one of them in particular is the 5 faculties or 5 bases of power. So the list is faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom or insight. So it's interesting to note that faith is not just standing on its own. You have to have more than just faith to develop yourself spiritually. You need to bring in these other aspects. And the lists almost always begin with faith and they end with wisdom or insight. So there's also an emotional or intellectual aspect to faith. So we have devotional practices. One of them today, we chanted the 3 refuges, the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And oftentimes this can be sort of an inspiration. that we have these three precious aspects of practice all within ourselves. As we do the devotional practices, sometimes there's a sense of gladness or joy or happiness, tranquility that just kind of seems right. And let me see, what do I want to do next? I think I'll do this one next. Also at the breakfast table, we were reading from this text, The Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana. So it's a pretty well-known text, and it's referred to in our seminary program. And this talks about four aspects of faith. So question, what kind of faith should one have and how should they practice it? Answer, briefly, there are four kinds of faith. The first is faith in the ultimate source. Because of this faith, one comes to meditate with joy on the principle of suchness. Does anybody know what that word suchness means or have heard it before? Okay. Yeah. So,
I think it's things as they are, without describing it.
Things as they are. Mm-hmm. So it's maybe the complete experience of things as they are, interconnection, suchness. So that's the first kind of faith. Because of this faith, one comes to meditate with joy on the principle of suchness. Yeah, the faith in the ultimate source. The second faith is the faith in the numberless excellent qualities of Buddhas. Because of this faith, one comes to meditate on them always, to draw near to them in fellowship, to honor them, to respect them, developing capacity for goodness and seeking after the all-embracing knowledge. The third is faith in the benefits of Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. Because of this faith, one comes to remember and practice various disciplines leading to enlightenment. And the fourth is faith in the Sangha, the Buddhist community, whose members are able to devote themselves to the practice of benefiting both themselves and others. Because of this last faith, one comes to approach the assembly of bodhisattvas constantly with joy and seek instruction from the correct practice. Okay, so it's interesting. Now we're just defining faith as Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and then we're adding this element of suchness. So one other aspect of faith before we get into a discussion, and that is verified faith. So in Buddhism, we have this scripture called the Kalama Sutta. The Kalamas were, they were a tribe, a group of people living in ancient India. And as the Buddha did his travels, he encountered this group of people. They lived at a crossroads. And they said to him, we have so many teachers coming through here, and they're all telling us about faith, and this is the way, this is what it means, this is the way to practice it. What do you say? And so the Buddha's reply was this: do not believe anything based on mere hearsay. Don't believe in traditions merely because they're old and have been handed down for many generations and in many places. Do not believe anything on account of rumors or because people talk a great deal about it. Do not believe because the written testimony of some ancient sage is shown to be. Do not believe in what you fancy, thinking that because it's extraordinary, it must have been inspired by a god or other wonderful being. Do not believe anything merely because presumption is in its favor, or because the custom of many years inclines you to take it as true. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and priests. But whatsoever, after thorough investigation and reflection, is found to agree with reason and experience, as conductive to the good and benefit of one and all, and of the world at large, only accept that as true, and shape your life in accordance therewith. In the same text, the Buddha said, must be applied to his own teachings. Do not accept any doctrine from reverence, but first try it, as gold is tried by fire. So this is known as sort of the Sutra of inquiry, deep inquiry, or discovery, and curiosity. So as we move along this journey of faith, sometimes we find it lagging, and that's in particular when we can bring in this aspect of curiosity or inquiry to validate the things that we've heard or to validate the practices. So I know sometimes in my meditation practice, things get sort of stale, and I say, well, why the heck am I doing this? Nothing seems to be happening. And then I arouse this sense of discovery or inquiry. I'm told that meditation works. Why is that? And then I maybe look at, well, what's going on in my body right now? And once I get into my body, sort of away from all these stories I'm telling myself, then the meditation becomes meaningful again. So that's what this experience of verified faith is all about. Yeah, okay, so I think sort of what I would like to do now is based on that overview, and that was kind of a lot of talking, a little bit of intellectual stuff. I'm curious, and I would like to know, what does faith mean to you? How is it personally meaningful to you? And we'll pass the microphone. Is that enough of a prompt, or do you want more? Enough of a prompt? Okay. Yeah.
So I guess I'm thinking of a few things. The faith is something that I think about very often. Before I walked past the temple and started coming, I was a parishioner at an Orthodox church for a while. And I think was definitely kind of seeking like some deeper faith like that. But I noticed that one thing I could never get behind was how do I know that Jesus Christ is the truth, the way, and the light? How can you prove that to me? How can you know for sure? And the best answer that I ever got was, well, that's where faith comes from. It's where faith comes in. I think that was a pretty good answer. But it sort of goes to me along with what I think about how faith is so meaningful, where I think that there's kind of like this void inside of every person, a fundamental emptiness, if you will. I think it's probably similar to what some people might describe as like true nature or Buddha nature or whatever. This fundamental emptiness, and I think that it makes people very uncomfortable. And I think that that's why people drink and smoke and have gambling addictions. And I also think that that's why people believe in God, to sort of be comfortable with being with this kind of emptiness or thing that might make you uncomfortable or something that is not totally known. Like for me, it's more than 6 years on, kind of dealing with the aftermath of some things that happened to me. I feel like I still kind of deal with this like state of loss with my body, and I think that's how I use faith as a tool, kind of like being comfortable with being uncomfortable, sort of like trusting the process. Yeah.
This week I've been thinking a lot about vulnerability and how for a long time in my life I sort of operated under the belief that being vulnerable is very, very something to be avoided because you could get crushed and you'll die. And trust and intimacy and vulnerability were not good things to pursue. And I've made a lot of changes in my life in the last year, and I'm really starting to learn about how vulnerability is really the opposite of that. It is a strength. It is not about being crushed. It's about being saved. It's about being rescued. It's about being helped. And just in the last 2 days, I had a lovely conversation with someone who really challenged me about faith. And those two words came up in sentences over and over and over and over again. And right now, sitting here, I'm realizing, oh, that for me is a way to also embrace and accept faith. That faith is vulnerability. Faith is being vulnerable. Faith is being open to other. It's being open to all, and it's the opposite of an isolation. That was just something I was thinking about.
You said that faith is the antidote to fear, and that resonated with me because for me, whenever I am in a state of fear, the only way that I can tap into a sense of calm is to find that it's almost like a fire of faith to put that out. And I have to be reminded of it sometimes because it'll be the strangest things that'll remind me to sit with faith because fear pops around us every day, whether it's like you were saying, the fear of the void. It's a scary, scary thing to sit with, especially in the world we live where quiet and stillness are scary. So I really appreciate the fact that that's part of the toolbox of how I'm moving through life.
Similarly to you, Mom, I would have considered myself a skeptic for most of my life, thinking that faith and reason were opposites. To me now, when I think of faith, faith means belief in the unseen or forces that are not fully understood by the rational mind. And when I think on that, it need not be in opposition to reason whatsoever, but our rational mind can only make sense of or perceive a small fraction of what's actually going on. And a newborn babe might be able to digest food or do any number of the things that it can do without understanding how these things actually take place. So when I think of faith, I think of just the fact that even if I can't fully understand what's going going on or can't make sense of suffering, let's say. Having faith means that there's forces that are happening that I can't fully understand, and it's belief in that.
I think for a lot of us that were raised in a Christian tradition, the word faith has these connotations of blind faith, and that doesn't resonate too well with me. So what I found is that when I see the word faith in a Buddhist context, I like to substitute the word trust, because I think that that one doesn't have the same connotations that faith has. And to me, that means trusting in our own potential, and trusting that if we consistently follow the practices, then it will help improve things for us. Like in the Kalama Sutra, based on our past experience, not based on just some blind faith, but knowing, for example, that on the mornings when I do practice, the sense of calm continues even after the practice is over, and throughout the day. So I like to substitute the word trust, and I find that personally to be helpful.
I think faith is something that's experienced when I was a little boy. I believe I was able to ride this bike after my dad stopped holding on to the back of it. Faith is, for me, is actual action to get to a goal. When I began to practice my precepts, I had faith that in that first precept, cherish all life, do no harm, but cherish all life. I had to practice that to learn how not to harm, not just humans, but animals, insects, plants, fowl, fish, intentionally. And now I learned how to live like that based on faith and belief. That's just a starting point. And then it transformed into knowledge and power. And that's what I believe, that I can live according to my precepts and get the benefits from living that kind of life. I have complete faith that I can live and express the life of an awakened human being in this lifetime, as I was taught. My teacher will often say, may you awaken in this lifetime. And I believe that's possible through my meditation practice. So yeah, faith, as my own was speaking earlier, that the clouds block the sun, but it's only through the sun that I can see the cloud. So I know the sun is there because it makes the cloud visible for me to see it in the first place. So that's faith until I see the sun, which is my own clear mind and pure heart, that I can begin to live this daily. And that's important. That's what brings the real joy. And I have a clear mind, a clarity of mind, a purity of heart, and a spontaneity in my actions, which is all natural, authentic, unconditioned, and real. As my friend said over there, like a newborn. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo, for talking in detail about faith, because I don't think I've really thought about it too much. Other than like on the way over here today, there was a sign on the side of the road. It said, losing religion, get faith. And just kind of roll my eyes. And it's because I just think that someone's got to sell you something to have faith in something outside yourself. But if you're talking about faith within yourself, I think that is actually where it's at. But I also started thinking that it's probably not just faith that's going to save you. And I know my own, it listed several things that go with faith. And I was thinking maybe more like compassion for yourself is sort of an antidote to a lot of the suffering, because I think you can kind of go down a lot of paths just trying to believe in yourself without like the wisdom involved with it.
I can relate to what Mylan was saying. Faith has always been kind of a loaded word for me. I'm kind of a skeptical person. And I always thought of it as people pretending to know things that they don't. Because, at least my experience in religion is a lot of times people tend to look back to this scripture or this person, believing that they're perfect and they had all the best answers we're ever going to have, and the conversation's over at that point. And I think that sort of faith is, tends to be bad for society. It gets in the way of growth, stops people from being as open. But I like the sort of faith they talk about in the Kama Sutra. I remember reading this book when I was in high school, Life of Pi. They talked about faith, where you run as far as the legs of reason will carry you and then leap. Is the quote in the book, and I thought that was really good. Because a lot of times, for me in life, it's good to act out of my evidence and experience and whatever, but you don't always have that. Sometimes you need to be willing to be vulnerable and jump forward and be willing to correct and fail forward as you go. And just having the trust in life that it'll be okay. If things don't work out the way you thought they would, the universe takes care of itself, and you can always keep correcting. It's kind of getting to be my concept of it.
Thank you. So when you first started talking about faith, I also felt like, oh, I don't identify with this at all. I was raised Jewish, and faith was a word that you use if you're Christian. So even though there's a lot of overlap between Judaism and Christianity, you felt like, well, I can't use that word because that's not Jewish. But as you were talking, then I realized that actually that type of faith is something that I probably use in my everyday life. So professionally, one of the things that I do is I'm an anxiety therapist, and I do a type of therapy called exposure therapy, where we essentially encourage people to face their fears. And in order to do that, tell people you have to have some trust in yourself that you're going to be able to make it through, that you have to take a risk in a world that's unpredictable. So I think having that sense of like, I maybe can trust you as the client, but they have to ultimately have trust in themselves. So I feel like that was very helpful. And kind of along those lines, I've been coming here off and off for like over 10 years, and this is the first time I've ever said anything at a service. So I thought this was a good opportunity.
It's been really great to listen to everyone speak to their experiences, and I have been thinking a lot about faith and also its relationship to surrender, and not surrendering, which is different, but the idea of what surrender means in tandem with this idea and concept of faith. And I think the best way into considering how I've used it in my life is thinking of a situation in which I have. And so as we're sitting here and everyone's speaking, I recall when I had to learn to walk again. And Maum, the quote in which you referenced in taking this first step is very real into this space that you don't know. I have been told that doctors didn't know if I would walk again, and there's a moment in which my default was to basically tell them that they needed to come back with a different answer because I think in that moment I had to have faith in myself and in the idea that I would. And I consider that often, that moment of saying, I surrender to this moment in that I don't know what to do next. But I do have faith in my ability to find a kernel or seed within myself that will propel me into this space that I don't know. And I think we are met as humans with so much that we will never know in the moment precisely how to deal with. But I think it's that understanding and faith in knowing that we have done many difficult things that will lead us to that next place. Thank you.
Wow, this has been a very rich discussion. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. And I think all of us now can walk away with all of these reflections about faith and think about what it means to us. So let's bring our service to a close with the 4 great vows, and then we'll move into together action and announcements. So please repeat after me. All beings one body.
All beings one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions one root.
Blind passions one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates one mind.
Dharma gates one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
Here's our announcement today.
I'm at the Dharma gate, hopefully with one mind. The services are kind of more back to usual now in the fall. We had our family service last week if you were here. This is more like what we'll have. Also, we're going forward with 4 p.m. services the first and third week of every month now. So if you can't make this one, maybe you can try that. We got a few things going on right now. We're kind of in the midst of a meditation class. I don't know if now's the time to jump in. You can if you want. But the next one is looks like October 19th, and those are on Thursday evenings at 6:30. We also have some overnight meditation classes too. We just had one recently. Yoga is returning 6:30 Tuesdays on Halloween. We have several things during the week now, which you can, well, for a long time have had. Meditation sitting group for Wednesday evenings and Thursday mornings. There's more like a discussion group. According to the flyer, to the email bulletin, if you're not on the list, you might want to sign up for it. Apparently we have midday meditation possible. Is that online? Online. Yeah. So that's I think 11:30.
11:45.
11:45. Are you leading it? How you?
It's a mixture of me and Maum.
Yeah.
And
So-
it's just, could I just say something?
Sure.
It's a really nice break in your day because it's very concise. We actually do 25 minutes of meditation beginning at 11:45. Then we do the short 3 refuges like we did today. And then we just have a little check-in. And we may start just having a little scripture reading or something. So it's not going to be a big to-do, but it's a nice little chunk that's a break in your day at lunchtime if you feel like you need a break with a little meditation.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Today you've probably heard, have together action, which you might know as gardening practice, work practice, Dharma in action, and it'll be led by Haiku this week, I believe. Yeah, so afterwards, if you want to hang out, maybe 15, well, we'll get started fairly soon after the service. Maybe spend 15 minutes helping move soil or dig weeds.
Please meet in the backyard. We have some new native plants. Meet there so you can see what the plants are that are going to be going in on our good landscape, which we've been all working on.
Yeah, they're great. Strawberries that don't have strawberries, coneflowers that aren't coneflowers, coneflowers that are coneflowers. It's different. Honestly, I need to get more into it and know more about those things. Let's see. So what else? Dharma recovery today at noon as always.
Dharma recovery will meet at noon in the old temple right next door to the historic temple, the big yellow house. And also while I have the floor, there are some tomatoes in the bin out there for the Saga members to take home if they like.
Thank you. Wasn't sure if they were plums at first. Dark red.
Multicolored.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks. So I think that's about it for one thing I did want to point out, we were discussing yesterday that we could use more greeters, like if you want to maybe apprentice as a greeter. Kyle had helped us today. He's stepping into that role, which is great. Anyone else that's interested, just let us know and we can kind of like show you how things work. I guess other than that, I would say thank you for all your efforts here, time and money. There's a fishbowl outside if you care to donate money, time. Just being here is wonderful. So,
I'd like to just tell a little story. Maybe I should take this one. It's prompted by seeing these cabbages. And they have been brought by one of our members who's a farmer. And he brings things very regularly, you might have noticed. It started in our monastic tradition where lay people were encouraged. Usually they were farmers. It was an agricultural time on the planet. They were encouraged to bring some produce for the temple altar. If they had a really good cabbage, that would be the one to put on the altar. And so when over the years, we've done this, and we've had parsnips on the altar and every different kind of vegetable. And so Iljan bringing these cabbages reminds me of that tradition. There's some nuts. And so if you have something in your garden or something that you like to offer to the temple, you're always welcome when you come to put it there. You know? And we will, if we don't use it ourselves, we distribute it to other members, and we are in touch with a place called Mercy House, which regularly feeds homeless people. And sometimes it goes beyond that to other places where food is needed. So if you are growing a lot of onions these days and you find a really good one, welcome to put one. And thanks, Iljan, for always doing outreach.
Yeah, I'm looking at those cabbages and thinking, Hayun, it's time for us to make kimchi. We're excited. Yeah. Okay, so let's close. We'll stand and make 3 bows together. And then we ask your assistance in picking up mats and cushions. So the mats and cushions touching the carpet remain, and the rest should be stacked in the corner.
You can feel the heat on these.
Yeah, I could feel the heat on this one too.